I will call the October 17th, 2022 meeting of the Community Preservation Committee to order. Please note that tonight's meeting is recorded and broadcast on Channel 18, and in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. Anybody? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Terry Duenas, Marilyn Fifield,
Here.
Deb Converse.
Unmuted.
Deb? Not here? Thought I... Deb, you're muted. I see her.
Okay.
Catherine? Deb, you here? Catherine's here. Tom Lee?
Here.
Stephen Robichaud?
Here.
James Sinalia?
Here.
And Lindsay Council is here. Very good. First item on our agenda is approval of the draft Community Preservation Committee regular meeting minutes from August 15th, 2022. Everyone had a chance to go over the minutes? Motion, anyone?
Marilyn, I would move to approve them.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the minutes as drafted? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Terry Duenas. Terry, are you here with us? Nope. Marilyn Fifield,
Yes.
Deb Converse,
Yes.
Catherine Garofoli,
Yes.
Tom Lee,
Yes.
Stephen Robichaud,
Yes.
James Tenalia,
I have to abstain.
abstain. And Lindsay Council votes yes. Very good. All right, well, the first item of business that we have tonight is a letter of intent has been received from the Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mills, COMM, C-O-M-M, Water Department requesting a fund of $200,000 to enable COMM to obtain the professional services necessary to quickly respond to potential properties as they become available for the protection of COMM Water District drinking water supply. And I believe we have the superintendent here with us this evening. Greg?
Yes, Craig Crocker, COMM Superintendent. Thanks for your consideration and opportunity to discuss. We hope to use the requested funds for professional services such as legal, consulting, engineering, and appraisals, which would allow us to act on potential properties for open space and water supply protection. The funding would allow us to obtain that necessary information and bring it to our voters at a district meeting for a potential sale or purchase. So we're hoping to kind of have all our ducks in a row when we go to present that to the voters. And we know sometimes in the middle of a budget year, that's hard for us to come up with that funding. Should a parcel become available for us, so we kind of don't want to miss out on that opportunity. We're hoping to use those funds for that sort of use. I don't know if you have any questions.
Yep. Members?
I have a question. I'm just slightly concerned with the amount seems very high for professional services. You know, $200,000 for appraisals seems like a lot of money. For that, I mean, for a purchase of property, totally different story. But and correct me if I'm wrong, but I went through the COMM financials from your website, and it looks like you guys have almost $14.5 million in cash. It just seems like a lot of money where you guys could probably float appraisals and whatnot, and for us to purchase. But that's just some concerns that I have kind of right off the bat. It just seems like a very high dollar amount for professional services.
Thank you. Anyone else, members? Tom? Did I see you? Yes.
I don't have a problem in terms of, funding the legal piece of that purchase if there is one. But my concern would be like, I think in the past, we have not really funding any engineering for the new water source stuff. So I just want to, Craig to kind of explain what kind of engineering are you expecting on this?
Just to look at how it would protect, there wouldn't be any sort of engineering in the scope of developing a water source, if that's what you mean. I meant sort of, a surveying, that type of engineering, nothing to do with developing a water source or, mapping it out, seeing how it would impact our land if it's nearby, that type of thing. Sort of a consulting, right?
So it's
Helping us with grants, but nothing as far as,
so
you know,
it's
the-
not so it's not the hard engineering
yeah, exactly.
foundations.
Yes.
Anyone else? Deb?
So it's an open-ended $200,000 over what period of time? And I understand what you want to use it for because you need immediate money lots of times, but it's just a source of money you tap into?
Yeah, and we would use it as parcels become available. I don't really have a time frame on. I can't really give you a hard time on that.
Anyone else? Members? Catherine?
I was just wondering, Lindsay, have we ever provided funding for something like this for entities that are sort of outside of a town department?
Yes, we did a very similar thing like this with the
Water.
Hyannis Water Department. They have a certain area they wanted to concentrate on for any acquisitions that were based in that particular locale. So we gave that source of fund, same idea, just to see if it was sort of like a quick reaction fund. But I think with this one, maybe we'd want to set down some parameters on how this would be allotted and for what purposes, really define it. We could sit down with, because I expect, I expect the other districts are going to be wanting something similar too. So maybe we should standardize this and we can spell it out how they're going to be required to, request the funds if they submit certain documents would be allowed. I would really like to know in terms of some of these sites, more zones of contribution and that kind of stuff that really is important as we talk about some of these abutting parcels and zone ones, particularly those areas. There's a long list of those that just sort of grew into the wells. The wells were once all by themselves. So I think this is a very interesting proposal. And I think, though, we would want to get some questions answered first before we send it to application. So we've including everything. Tom?
Just along Jim's thought, in a sense, like, we could fund, say $100,000 to start with. And then if they need some more money, they can always come back and asking for more.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be something all could be worked out, right, Craig? As you get a project,
Sure.
maybe because we may want to have some information. Well, we want to know about this. What about this aspect? How close is it to that? Or
Sure.
we could work out a sort of plan to move forward. And again, another thing that comes in though, and I won't dismiss it. These appraisals can get expensive, particularly if you're going for these federal grants. There's a lot of money out there in federal water protection grant money that can be real big money sometimes. And if you want to get these federally approved appraisals, they're can run 10 grand. So it's not unheard of to run up some pretty big numbers on some of this stuff.
Right.
Some of the legal fees that came out of the Wakeby Road project were rather high because it kept getting bounced around between different folks for different changes. And that's today when the ticker's running, it's running. Anyone else?
I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
So, Mr. Crocker, what is the annual budget for surveys and appraisals, I guess for FY23 for the Water District? And then Do you have any properties specifically in mind that the district is targeting for purchase?
Typically, we don't budget for anything like this unless we know of it coming up. Like that Wakeby Road project that Lindsay just referenced came up in the middle of a budget year, and it hit my budget pretty hard, my operation and maintenance budget. It was an unexpected, pretty much, and we partnered with the other entities, and we didn't really think it was going to cost us anything, and then it ended up hitting us pretty hard, my operation and maintenance budget. So that's kind of what led to this. But I have some parcels. We have a list that I think we provided this group before, so I probably would start with that list. There's a couple in that I have in mind that I'd like to try to investigate and see if we can get some kind of sale. I don't know. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Deb.
Didn't we help buy a parcel for COMM maybe 3 or 4, 5 years ago?
I believe the last acquisition was the Lampy property off Race Lane, right? I think that was the last land bank.
Yeah, no, I thought this was protecting the water resources for the.
That was Wakeby Road,
That's what's Wakeby
where we got a
Road.
CR. That was the last one
Okay.
but we're that was a partnership project.
Yeah, I just don't have an idea of what anything would cost. No idea what a appraisal would cost.
Right now, appraisals for the Yellow Book we sent that out to bid. And just to be eligible for the state grant, it was, I believe, $5,600 for one appraisal. We did a windshield appraisal not too long ago. And that was around windshield appraisals, not as in depth. And that was around 15. I think legal services, that $250 an hour for an attorney is not unheard of. So it runs up.
Yeah.
You got to do title work too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Some of these parcels have been sitting around. You got to do real lengthy title work. So, it adds up. But let's work this out. I think we got enough questions, and we'll put them together, and we'll see if we can't draft some kind of a plan going forward for the application. Check with legal, see if there's any conflicts here, and go from there. Is that any other questions? That's sort of what I'm sensing. I wanted to open this up for public comment, if that's all right with members. We've been good with that?
Yep. Go ahead.
You got anybody? Sarah?
I'm not
Do we
sure if
lose-
anyone is here specifically for this item, but if they are, they wanted to make a comment, that would be your opportunity.
Yes. Jessica, I see your hand go up.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just I had a question about whether or not, given the comment from Mr. Tenaglia, have you put this item to vote to the voters? Have you requested 200,000 be put into your annual warrant for such a purpose?
No, not for the district voters. No.
No, because that might be a good place to start too. Your district voters might be willing to take that on in the budget.
Good suggestion. Anyone else out there have a question for the letter of intent for COMM for 200,000 in CPC funds for professional services, appraisals, those types of things? None, seeing none. All right, I think we're gonna get some of these questions answered, and we'll have you back, Craig, when we get them, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
thank you very much. Next item is a letter of intent has been received requesting $350,000 in community preservation, open space, and recreation funds for the acquisition of a 3.09 acre parcel located at 153 Oakmont Road, Comaquid. This parcel is adjacent to protected Barnstable Fire District land and would further protect the resource in perpetuity through a conservation restriction and preserve the character of the residential neighborhood from overdevelopment in the future. I believe Marty Riley was speaking to this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And I, first of all, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to make a presentation tonight regarding this request as the petitioner. Also with me, next to me, is Joe Berlandi, who's the president of the Comaquid Heights Neighborhood Association. So following my presentation, Joe might want to make a couple of comments, and then I would like to turn it over to the committee to ask any questions that you may have of me. Just for the record, my name is Martin Riley, and as I mentioned, I do have the property under agreement for purchase at 153 Oakmont Road in Barnstable. It's a we believe it's a 3.6 acre parcel, but it's reflected presently as a 3.09 acre property at 153 Oakmont Road, Comaquid Heights, Barnstable. The property is presently owned by the Barnstable Housing Authority. And I believe there's a map that you have available tonight, which has been provided. And on the screen, I think you can see the subject property that we have at 153 Oakmont Road. And the property, again, is uniquely owned by the Barnstable Housing Authority, but it abuts a 10.76 acre parcel that's owned by the Barnstable Fire Water District, which is going to be open space in perpetuity to protect the water resource area. So as I mentioned, I have the property under agreement, and I have put together a plan to develop the property into a very small 40B subdivision. And myself and our team, I have been doing development for over 38 years, and my members of my team have been doing it so that for many years as well. So collectively, that we have over 100 years of experience in doing this type of a thing. We initially, upon putting the property under agreement, we spent some time trying to conceive what we thought might be an appropriate plan for development there. And there were different iterations that were done, but the most recent and final iteration was one that called for creating 8 freestanding single-family homes on lots sized approximately 8,500 square feet to 9,000 square feet. And in the process of, beginning to work on the project, we met with a lot of the neighbors. And whenever I do a project, or people that are involved with me do a project, we always try to be as respectful as we can to the neighbors. And we try to incorporate into a project as many of their concerns as possible and practicable. In this instance, as I say, I met with a few of the neighbors, and I also met with the board of the Comaquid Heights Neighborhood Association on a couple of occasions, and they had concerns that they had expressed to me about the project. And as a result of that, being respectful of the neighborhood and their concerns, I creatively tried to think about a possible solution relative to the use of this property that really could be a win-win-win for all parties. And the proposal that I have put forth before you tonight for your consideration is consistent with the requirements and the categories and the criterion for use of available CPC funds by the CPC committee to purchase properties in the town of Barnstable for open space. And the proposal that I have that I want to talk to you about tonight really meets several of those criteria. It's a very unique situation. First and foremost, it's my understanding that the CPC committee likes to selectively acquire open space. This would allow the CPC funds to be used to preserve this entire 3.09 or 3.6 acre parcel in perpetuity as open space with a conservation restriction, which would prevent it from ever being developed in the future. Secondly, the uniqueness of this property is that it's presently owned by the Barnstable Housing Authority. So the money that comes from the sale is going to go for the benefit of the Barnstable Housing Authority, and that money can be used for housing, to create needed housing in the town of Barnstable, whether it be renovating and improving existing housing or adding new housing units to the Barnstable Housing Authority portfolio of properties for the benefit of people in the town that really need quality, affordable, moderately priced workforce housing. The third thing that's very important here is that the property, as referenced on the map, abuts the 10.75 or 76 acre Barnstable Fire, Barnstable Water District property, and acquiring that property would help further protect and preserve the watershed. And I know that the CPC over the years has expressed a desire, when possible, to sometimes acquire properties that abut water district properties. And lastly, the neighborhood is totally 100% supportive of this project. So really, this kind of creative solution can be a win-win-win for all parties. In addition to that, I had a preliminary conversation on Friday, I think it was October 6th, with Lori Fenton, the director of the Barnstable Housing Authority, and I talked to her about this creative solution. And she thought this would be something that would be okay from their perspective, because they, again, would be getting money that they could use for housing in another part of town, and possibly another part of town where there is public water and public sewer. So they were, Lori was favorably disposed to this, and I'm actually going to be going before the Barnstable Housing Authority Committee on this Thursday, the 20th of October, to talk to them about this, because again, it will be a win-win for them, because they'll also get the funds that they can use for housing and allow the preservation of open space, and also protect the water district by being adjacent to the Barnstable Fire District, Water District property. Also, I have a meeting scheduled for this Thursday morning with the Barnstable Land Trust to talk to them about being the entity that could hold the CR restriction. So, you know, I think for all of these reasons, it's a very unique situation, a very creative situation, but it meets all the criterion for use of your available funds. And it's my understanding that the CPC does have funds available for this type of purchase. So, you know, I would respectfully ask tonight on behalf of not only myself, but also the neighborhood, that you hopefully favorably consider this and allow us to proceed to file an application. What I'd like to do at this time is just turn it over to Joe Berlandi, the president of the Comaquid Heights Neighborhood Association, and then I will be available to answer any questions that you have of me. And I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for giving us this opportunity to come before you tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Joe Berlandi. I live at 33 Mid Pine Road in Comaquid, and I have a law office in Barnstable Village. And I've had the opportunity over the course of years to work with your committee on a number of projects for the Historical Society, Hills of Cape Cod, and we've always had a positive relationship. But we're here tonight not because of the village, but because of Comaquid Heights. And we met Mr. Riley a few weeks ago when he approached us about his proposal, and the board met with him, and I met with him several times after that. And one thing I can say without question is that he's a man of integrity, and I mean that sincerely. And when he makes a promise, he keeps his promises. So we're very fortunate that he came to us before he moved forward with the project and asked us for our opinion. We have a board. I'm the president of the board of Comaquid Heights Homeowners Association, about 350 single-family homes in our community. But he came to us before he moved forward, and we had enough time to talk to him, discuss our issues and our concerns, and we're very pleased that he has decided not to build there, and that he is going to donate this land and put it into conservation for perpetuity. Well, not donating. All right, but the point is, it's going to be put into conservation and the land trust for perpetuity, and that's helpful for everybody, we think. So we hope that you will approve his letter of intent and move forward, because we believe he's doing the right thing and that it will benefit everyone in the community. So thank you for the time to listen to me.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add one more thing, the final comment before we open it up for questions of the members. The purchase price that I'm paying for the property is $325,000. It's a matter of public record from the Barnstable Housing Authority. Since I have put the property under agreement, I've worked on several different iterations of possible plans in an effort to be respectful to the neighborhood. So the only thing that I want to recoup is my, I obviously have architectural costs, I have engineering costs. Dan Ojala is my engineer, who lives in the Comaquid neighborhood. We have legal costs. So I would convey the property for the price of $350,000, which essentially, covers my costs. I'm not trying to make any money per se here, but I'm trying to do something that can be a win-win-win for the neighborhood and for the CPC with open space, and also protect the water district and help the Barnstable Housing Authority to make sure that they get the funds. And obviously, if for some reason it's not feasible to do this, I've shared it with the Comaquid Heights Association that, then I would have to proceed with the project. But I wanted to give the neighborhood every chance to do this open space purchase through CPC funds, which really makes great sense, I think, and would be a unique win-win-win for all parties. So I thank you so much again for letting us come before you, and any questions that you have, I look forward to answering. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Riley. Members, Deb?
Lindsay, I have to recuse myself because the Housing Authority, I'm on the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, and we could benefit.
All right, you're recused.
Okay.
Jim?
I have I'm a little confused. So did you put this property under agreement to do a housing development? Is that the kind of
Yes.
step one?
When we do submit the application, if the board would allow us to go forward to an application, I'll attach a copy of the P&S. But yes, the purpose of the purchase was to do a small 40B project. And again, that project will consist of 8 units, 8 freestanding single-family detached units through the 40B process as allowed for by the state law here in the town of Barnstable. 25% of those units would be deed restricted in perpetuity. And then 6 of the units would be market rate and 2 would be affordable. And, they would be 55 and over is what I would do if in fact we did it. But I do think that the proposal before the CPC really is unique and a good one. I'm a former senator here in the Commonwealth. We've been involved many years in public policy, and I just think this is a very creative use that can be positive for all parties. And the funds that the BHA, Barnstable Housing Authority, derives can be used to create some housing in another part of town, and possibly another part of town that already has public sewer and public water and might even have a greater density. So, but that is, yes.
So let me ask you this. So if it doesn't go through with, Barnstable Land Trust and Conservation, you are still going to develop this into housing?
Yes, if in fact, in spite of our best efforts here collectively, the Comaquid Heights Neighborhood Association and myself, if the CPC and the town council for some reason chose not to do this, then I would proceed with the development of the 8 units, yes.
So I'm asking because I think you might get pushback because we are so desperate for housing. Is it?
Well,
are we better of you doing the development or BHA having 350 grand? Who's gonna create more units? I guess is probably the question.
What I think is really again unique about this, because it's an unusual situation where the BHA owns this property, which I'm buying. The fact that the money they get will allow them to do housing in another place, I think that's very, very favorable. Again, if for some reason, the CPC didn't support this, then I would do the 8 units, but possibly that money could be put to work where they could create more units and at the same time meet your other goals of open space and protection of water resources, et cetera. So I think it's favorable. So I know there's a great demand and everybody's talking about housing, but I also think this will create some housing because the money ultimately is going to go for that purpose. That the Barnstable Housing Authority will get money for that purpose.
Okay. I guess, if this does move on to application, that would be something that I would want to see is, I guess, what's on the other end of this for housing. I know BHA can't give us an exact plan, but I think that's, for me personally, I think housing is a bigger issue than open space recreation at this present moment. Well,
we'll be looking, obviously, if if the CPC did buy this, we'd be looking for another area where we could do some more units, even more than units than we would do here. And we're already commencing that process right now. So I think it's a potential for a win-win-win and to uniquely preserve open space in this neighborhood at the request of the neighbors. And it abuts the Barnstable Fire District property, which is also very unique, that Barnstable Fire Water District property. So, right, thank you
Thanks.
for your consideration.
Other member, Steve? Steve, go ahead.
Lindsay, I just want to echo what Jim said. I was thinking the exact same thing. I mean, you know, the town is in a dire need for housing now, immediately, yesterday. And, you know, if you give me the choice between 8 units, 2 of which were going to be affordable, and 350K, that possibly, potentially, someday could be used for housing, I'd take the 8 units now in a second. So that's my personal opinion. You know, we're in such a dire need for housing. And, you know, that's just, that's where I'm at.
Just a note, if I may.
No, Deb, you got to either recuse yourself. You really probably shouldn't even be listening if you're
No,
recusing yourself.
I was just gonna clarify something. about the
Lindsay,
number of units.
The member Converse should be, she should turn her camera off so she's not in the conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think it's 8 affordable.
Catherine raised her hand.
wait a yeah, but I want Deb, did you hear that? You got to turn your camera off.
Here I am.
I stopped her video. She's all set. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now, who was that that wanted to?
I have a question, Lindsay.
Yes.
Yes, Catherine, go ahead.
So the property currently is owned by the Barnstable Housing Authority, yes? Housing
Mhm.
Trust.
That's correct. The Barnstable Housing Authority, yes. They're the owner of record at this time. Yes.
Do
Not the
we
trust.
have anybody from, like, other than Deb, from the Housing Trust that can talk about why they haven't, like, pursued building on this property?
Good question.
I
Anyone?
really can't speak for the Barnstable Housing Authority myself, but I know they'd like to see property developed for housing in the town of Barnstable. I know that they're also looking for other places in which to do this where they might even be able to do a greater density. This project that I'm proposing, 6 of the units would be market rate and 2 would be affordable deed restricted in perpetuity. So it may free up funds that could be used to create even more housing in other places. I know they're working on some RFPs, and then also for the neighborhood, I think it's important that I tried to come up with a plan that tries to be as respectful as possible to the neighborhood, but somebody else could come in there and try to do a lot more units, and that might not be positive for the watershed district or, you know, in terms of preserving open space. The property next to this property, if you look at the map again, there's the 10.75 acre Barnstable Fire District property on the right side if you're standing at Oakmont Road. On the left side, of course, is the 153 Oakmont Road property, but next to that, there's 5.5 acres of land as well. That's got a very complicated title, but you know, that's some property that apparently could be developed in the future by somebody too. So I think the uniqueness of being able to add this open space is a good one for the neighborhood. And I think it makes good sense. I think there's a lot of, it checks many of the boxes, as I say, open space, money for the BHA for housing, which can be used to create new and renovated and improved housing. Some of the housing units they have are in need of being upgraded, you know, improved. And also it preserves the fire district property. So.
Okay, well, we've got that. Any other members, questions for Marty? Tom, go ahead.
Just like Jim and Steve, I'm fighting between housing versus the water resource protections. And I'm wondering, you know, if the Barnstable Fire District has this parcel, what is the plan to use this parcel? And have you talked to the fire district whether they want to chip in as far as paying part of this cost to protect the land if they're interested as well? So
I did have a discussion with the Barnstable Fire District, and I believe it's their intent to preserve the 10.76 acres in perpetuity as open space for any future needs that they have. I also know that their financial condition is not that good, in that they just had to put in the recent past, a new $20 million filtration plant for the Barnstable Fire Water District. So, you know, they have a lot of costs associated with that they need their revenue for. And again, I think if there's a way to do something here that also preserves open space, it can be a positive thing for all parties, and it frees up funds to be developed in other parts of the town of Barnstable, you know. But I know they don't have the money, so that's why we're going to be talking to the Barnstable Land Trust to be the designee for the CR restriction.
Just for the information, I think the well that you're talking about for the Barnstable fire is because of the PFOS concentrations in the well that they detected, and they need to install that. They are in the process of installing the GACs to remove the PFOS. But, you know, it would be interesting to know whether this parcel, the groundwater underneath it, would have any PFOS or not. That would be a big question too. So,
Lindsay,
Any other members? Catherine, go ahead.
I need to understand why the Housing Trust is trying to sell this property when we are in need of housing. I am all for protecting open space most of the time, but I'm just trying to understand like how they have a property like this and haven't pursued that and could have come to us to assist them in coming together with plans for some affordable housing in that spot.
Good question.
And I can't speak to the Barnstable Housing Authority, but I do know that sometimes what they try to do is they try to ultimately do RFPs for developers to do housing on some of their properties. In this instance, that wasn't the case, but when I did put the property under agreement, it was with the intent of doing a small 40B there. But I think sometimes they like to have people do projects for them. But again, I can't speak directly to them. You know, that would be something that Deb or the committee and Lori Fenton could speak to in the future.
oh, I think Catherine's comment is correct. We should find out what is the reasons that the housing authority is not doing that. Because in that sense that, you know, they can also talk to the housing trust that we pay the money for the CBC to help them to do any housing projects. So that's my comment.
Okay, that seems to be a recurring theme there. So we need to check with the housing authority what their real intention was. Any other members with questions? And speak up. I can't see all of you on the screen here I've got, so. Anyone else before I open up to public comment? Seeing none, any members of the public here to speak for the letter of intent requesting $350,000 in open space funds for 153 Oakmont Road, Comaquid? Gordon Starr.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. I just have two comments. One is I'm curious that the Barnstable Housing Authority didn't offer this to wasn't required to offer this to the town before it was put on the open market. So that would be a question that I would like to see pursued. I've thought about this piece before, and this to put 8 units on the edge of the highway is, I think we need to think about whether that's really where we want to put housing. It's not walking distance to anything. It's not in any village center. It would be sort of isolated, requiring people to drive wherever they wanted to go. There's no bus service. I'm not sure it's the best place for housing. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else out there?
Yeah, Lindsay, this is Steve Rizzo, and I'm in a butter.
Okay.
We're abutters to the 10-acre parcel.
Great, thank you.
We're at 205 Oakmont Road, and you know we support Marty's proposal here because it is open space, and we are concerned about the fact that it's sat there since I believe 1972 as forested space. And as we know, that forested space contributes to the water aquifer in a much greater volume than developed space. So we support that. The other thing that you should be aware of is that APCC, the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, and the Housing Assistance Council have gotten together and created zone maps for development of public housing and low-income housing. And those are available online, and none of those are anywhere near here. We also support what Gordon says. There's no bus access here from the RTC, and there's no ability to walk from here to anywhere else. So we also want to second what Gordon has said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else to speak to the Oakmont Road request? Did I see a hand go up? Just go ahead and speak if I didn't see you. All right, back to the members. I think we have enough questions that need to be answered before we take a vote on this. Anyone else have any opinion on procedure forward?
No, we should get some answers first.
All right, we should. Marty, we'll get our answers and check with the Housing Authority, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. And I'll be meeting with them on Thursday. I'll be meeting with their board on this.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Right.
Chairman and members of the committee, thank you.
All right. That's it for the letters of intent for this month. We have an application. An application has been received from Tales of Cape Cod Incorporated requesting $125,000 in community preservation, historic preservation funds to provide accessibility to the building by installing a lift leading to a new accessible entrance on the east side of the building, regrading to create an accessible walkway to the building. The total estimated cost of the project is $372,497, with matching funds provided in the amount of $120,000 from a Massachusetts Cultural Facilities Fund grant of $147,497 in additional grants and private donations. Thank you very much. I believe we have Jean Gill here and to speak to this, Jean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity to present Tales of Cape Cod's application for partial funding for the exterior access project at the Old Colonial Courthouse. I do have a slide deck, and this will walk us through the application, and I'm happy to take questions as we go through the slides, and I'll take questions at the conclusion of my comments as well. Slide 2. The Old Colonial Courthouse is one of the most historic buildings on Cape Cod. It is listed in the National Register of Historic Places as a contributing element of the Old Kings Highway Historic District. It is also listed as a contributing property of the Old Kings Highway Regional Historic District and is listed on the Massachusetts Register of Historic Places as well. It is also a contributing property of the Barnstable Village Cultural District. Tales of Cape Cod is involved in a multi-year program to restore and preserve this building for future generations. Making our building and our programs accessible to all people is a top priority of Tales of Cape Cod, and as I will explain shortly, it is required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The exterior access project, which I am requesting partial funding for this evening, will involve regrading and enlarging the current parking space, creating an accessible walkway from the parking space to the building, creating a new entry on the east side of the building, and adding a mechanical lift to provide access to the first floor. As the chairman stated, the estimated cost for this project is $372,497. And we are requesting, Tales of Cape Cod requests $125,000 from the Barnstable Community Preservation. This request is $25,000 higher than we had indicated in our letter of intent, which was dated April 21st of this year. The reason for this increase is solely due to the increase in estimated cost of the project, which is now estimated to cost $39,000 more than we had originally predicted. This reflects both inflation as well as probably a more accurate estimate of the actual construction costs that will be incurred. Next slide, please. This slide shows the sources and uses of funds. On the right-hand side, total cost of the project is $372,497. This estimate was developed from 4 bids that we received from licensed contractors. We discarded the highest and lowest bid and averaged the 2 middle bids. Looking on the left-hand side, Tales of Cape Cod has secured $250,000 for this project. And we are applying to the Barnstable Community Preservation Fund for the remaining $125,000, which will complete the fundraising for the project. The next slide, please. The approval process for this project started 8 months ago. The setback on the east side of the building, because it is an historic property, is 12 feet. Since this is where we wish to put a walkway and to locate the lift, we had conversations with our neighbor to inform him of our intentions and to get his consent and understanding as we move forward. We also shared the plans with the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, which is the regulatory body in Massachusetts, which regulates access to buildings, access meaning handicapped access to buildings. This building is under 2 preservation restrictions. One is held by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The second is held by the town of Barnstable. We have received approvals to move forward with this project under both of those preservation restrictions. The final item I will comment on is the setback along the east property line. I indicated that setback is approximately 12 feet. If we're going to locate a lift, we will encroach on that 12-foot setback. So I had conversations with the planning department at the town, as well as the building commissioner. It turns out that Massachusetts law currently excludes handicapped ramps from zoning ordinances. And the building commissioner assured me, or provided in writing, the statement that a mechanical lift would receive the same treatment as a handicapped ramp, according to Massachusetts legislation. Are there any questions at this point? If not, we will move to the next slide, please. The next slide is a timeline for this project. The broken red line vertical line corresponds to roughly to the present time date. We have completed the schematic design. We have been through the permitting and approval process for the project. We are now in the fundraising portion of the project. As indicated, we are raising funds through a silent through a silent capital campaign. This work will continue into the spring of next year. If we are successful in raising more money than we have indicated, we will expand the scope of this project, and I'll describe a little bit about that in the future, in the next slides. We are currently at the point where we have received 4 bids from licensed contractors, and we are approaching Barnstable's community preservation funds for the balance of funds needed to get us to the $375,000 mark. If our application is received, we would hope to finish the construction documents for this project in December and January, put it to bid, and in the best scenario, we would like to start construction in the spring and get the major part of the construction work out of the way before our programming season occurs starting in mid-May and June. If for any reason, and these are confusing times for construction projects, if this is delayed, then we would look to start the construction project in September of next year. Next slide, please. This is the point in which I'll talk a little bit about the details of this project, the exterior access project. In 2020-21, Tales of Cape Cod made significant repairs to the first floor framing of the oldest portion of our building. This framing dates back to the construction of the second courthouse of Barnstable, which was built in 1763. Because the cost of that investment exceeded 30% of the assessed value of the building, we are now required under Massachusetts law, under Massachusetts regulations, to make the building fully compatible for people with disabilities. The constraints that we face for this project are three. One is the relatively small size of the land lot on which the building sits. The second is the elevation of the building relative to the street and sidewalk level. And the third is a very strong desire to preserve the historical character and principal architectural features of the building. The plan which we have accepted and we have developed with Catalyst Architects as well as Rick Lamb Landscape Architecture calls for building and access to the building on the east side as indicated in this drawing. We will expand the parking facility, which is currently in place, change the grade, lower it slightly, build a walkway around from the parking space to the east side of the building, construct a new porch and entryway on the east side of the building, and then place a mechanical lift to provide access to that parking. The next slide, please. The next slide is a site plan of the entire building. The construction work that we are proposing will take place in the upper right-hand corner of the facility. And I have blown this up in the next slide. If you flip to that one, please. The next slide. Here we go. This slide shows the driveway on the right-hand side, the proposed walkway leading from the driveway to the proposed lift, as well as steps that go up to the new porch and entry into the building. One of the things we've tried to do is to leave the oldest portion of the building, the portion of the building that was the courthouse for Barnstable County, intact. And so all of the changes that we are making to make the building accessible will take place in the 1905 addition to the building. The next slide, please. One of the questions in the application concerned whether we have received CPC funding for past projects. The answer is yes. We have received funding twice from the Community Preservation Committee for the restoration of this building. I think our application was actually approved in 2018. We received $85,000 to replace the roof, restore the bell tower, and restore the exterior of the building to its appearance in 1905. This represented 57% of the total cost. We also got funding from the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund, and Tales of Cape Cod did not contribute any money for that project. In October of last year, we completed the second phase of the project, which was to repair the first floor framing of the oldest portion of the building. We came back to you and asked for $75,000, which we received. That represented 47% of the total cost of the project. Tales of Cape Cod contributed 23.5 $100,000 or roughly 15% of the project. The remaining funding for that project was received from the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund. We are coming back now requesting your assistance in the third phase of our restoration work, which involves the exterior access. We are asking for $125,000, which will be 33% of the total cost. And Tales of Cape Cod is committed to contributing $100,000 or 27% of the total cost. I put the numbers together in this way so that you can see that it is our intent to reduce, and we're working hard to reduce our dependency on external funding. We do need external funding. We need your help to preserve this building, but we understand the importance of building a strong, viable organization which engages the community and attracts local funds. And that is where this slide kind of indicates declining dependency on external funds and increasing ability to make contributions from Tales of Cape Cod itself. Next slide, please. Future restoration projects or future projects. The next project that we face is going to be accessibility to the south and west entrances of the building. This is an architectural drawing. One, it shows that we are minimizing the changes to the appearance of the building with the plans that we have accepted. The project that we will have to undertake is to regrade the front lawn, to redesign and reset the brick walkways leading to the west and south porches. Because the grade of the front lawn will change, we will have to reconstruct the south porch, extending the steps probably by 18 inches to reach the grade. And we thought we would put a flagpole in the front lawn as well. As I have indicated, the estimated cost for this project is roughly $100,000. We will continue our fundraising work into the spring, and it is our hope that we will be successful and be able to include this project in the current project, the exterior access project. If we're not successful in raising those funds within that time, we would hope to undertake this project in the fall of next year, 2023. Next slide, please. The big project that we face in the future is going to be the interior, addressing the interior accessibility of the building. And this refers specifically to handicapped restrooms in the building. Again, working with Catalyst Architects, we have a plan. This plan minimizes any exterior changes, minimizes the exterior changes to the building from public sidewalks or public views. It would involve bumping out a section of the east wall to accommodate the handicapped restrooms, to allow for slightly enlarged kitchen, which would also be accessible, and storage in the back room. This would also be the time in which the organization should address and upgrade the HVAC equipment and electrical systems for the building. The numbers that I have presented on this slide are rough approximations. You could call them suggestive. We do not have construction specs and have not attempted to get bids for this. But this is and I don't have a timeline other than to say it's likely to be 5 years in the future when we get around to addressing this project. The next slide, please. The next slide shows the site plan for the bump out of the east wall, the handicapped restrooms, enlarged kitchen area, as well as storage space, and illustrates how this connects to the exterior access project for which we are currently seeking funding. That concludes my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Gene. Members, questions?
Lindsay?
Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
No question, just a comment. I want to commend you, sir, on acquiring outside sources of funding prior to your application here. Very much appreciated and very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Tom, you have anything on this one? I'd like to go over and see it, actually, now that they have a plan, so we should schedule that. Anyone else interested? All right, we'll be in touch with you, Gene, and I have to agree, a very good presentation. Any other questions from members?
Marilyn, may I ask a question?
Certainly, go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm just curious if they intend to apply again for the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund if grants are offered next month.
No. It has been one of the things I've tried to do, and I'm not a professional fundraiser, so all of this has been learning on the job. I've tried to develop relationships with other sources of funds, and we relied heavily on the Massachusetts Preservation Projects Fund for the first two phases of our work. We have secured funding from the Cultural Facilities Fund for this third phase, and it is my expectation that we will go back to both sources of funding for the interior access project when we undertake that. But it would be my hope that we can raise those funds from private sources without having to go back to the Preservation Projects Fund next month.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Tom?
You're on mute.
Muted, Tom.
Thank you for the good documentations of your projects, and it's very thorough in terms of the informations. I just wish you good luck because you're not going out for bid for another 3 to 4 months. Hopefully by that time, your pricing will be different. I'm sure it will be different. It will be higher, but I don't know whether it will stay within your contingency or not. So good luck.
Thank you, Tom. I am of the opinion that the only thing that we've got to, well, a good recession is going to solve the inflation problem, but it will be painful.
Very interesting. Anyone else, members? We do want to have a site visit, so we'll have you back next month with any additional questions, Gene, if that's all right with you. What was the other thing? I had a question for you. Do we have the details on the 4 bids you received? Breakdowns on each one?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
We have that? Because I have to admit, I have not completed reading the application. That's quite a presentation in itself, that document. So I do have to finish that. And you already have we had like 4 approvals. Do we have copies of those letters from Mass Historic and all that? Did you include those as well?
Yes.
You have.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That will save a lot of time on that part of it. And then you included the later phases. Anyone else, members, before I turn it open to the public? And seeing none, anyone here to speak to the project request of Tales of Cape Cod, asking for $125,000 in community preservation, historic preservation funds for a new handicap accessible entrance? Anyone here to speak to that? Seeing none. So there's nothing for us, members, no motions required. Gene will be in touch with you if you have any additional information. And we'll be in touch with you about the November meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you.
Lindsay, if you want to do the site visit, let me know.
All right, we'll set that up. Anyone, Catherine, I see you nodding. Anyone else in on that? We'll send it out. We'll get a date.
Yes, and let me know. I might be able to make it.
It's a great building if you haven't seen it. You know, one of the real stars of Barnstable Village, that's for sure. Okay. Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion. Pastor Angie Menke-Ballou has requested discussion with CPC regarding the decision made by the Massachusetts Historic Commission related to the Katuitt Federated Churches approved CPA grant. Okay, Angela, you're on.
Actually, Lindsay, this is Jennifer Loughran. I am a member of the Katuitt Federated Church, a resident of Katuitt, and on the church's building expansion team. And Angie asked me to actually take the lead tonight in this.
Okay.
So, and Angie obviously will comment along the way. I want to first of all thank everybody for letting us have this opportunity. You are going to notice on your agenda tonight, under your project updates, that a decision was made by the Massachusetts Historical Commission to deny our grant under the preservation restriction aspect of this process we've been going through. And I am going to try to keep some emotions out of this, but I can tell you that we were very shocked, surprised, upset that this has happened. And tonight I have a couple of objectives of how we'd like to get further guidance from you, help not only for us, but maybe other grant applicants in the future. Because as you know, this was a long journey that we took with all of you. I have some, yeah, thank you very much. So I believe you were given a copy of our letter that went to Attorney Barbara Harris from Michael Steinich from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. And if you didn't, there's parts of the letter I'm going to be sharing during this presentation. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So there's a couple points I'd like to go through this evening with you. One, remind you of the process that we took with the CPC from July through May, July 21st through May of 2022, to actually get approval from the CPC, the Historical Commission, the Town Council, approving us for a grant of a little bit over $179,000. I'd like to go through with you the actions that were taken from May after the approval from the Town Council through September 14th of this year, with the communication that Attorney Harris received from Mr. Steinitz, who is the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer. Like to inform the members of this committee the actual decision. We can walk through that. That came through on a letter from Mr. Steinitz to Attorney Harris on September 20th. Discuss with you folks if there's any options that we should explore. There is one next steps that we are going to be taken, but we are obviously looking for any other advice and guidance from you. And then lastly, as I mentioned, I think this has been a learning process, and maybe future grant applicants, that if we can't reverse this decision that is upon us right now, maybe it's going to help other CPC grant applicants in the future. Next slide, please. So we felt that we did everything we were supposed to do. As I said, we started this process more than a year ago. This is something that you folks are very familiar with. It's from the CPC's handbook that's out of the Boston office. And this is the specific flow chart that's used for qualifying historic projects for CPA funding. I'm highlighting in red a particular section that I'll refer to in the next slide. But we did everything we were supposed to do, and we were very happy that Chairman Council and committee member Tom Lee came to visit us and to understand the project. We thought we answered all the questions, crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's. And so again, if we could go to the next slide. piece that we knew that we had to go through extra efforts was because we were not considered registered on the state's register of historic places. So we went in front of the Historical Commission 2 times. Actually 3 times, I apologize. July 20th of 2021, we shared our plan designs with the Historical Commission. Following that, in August, we went back to them with revised plans because we did modify our architectural designs and some of our layouts to respond to questions and comments from the Historical Commission. At the August meeting, there was a vote and a motion to affirm that we were in a significant building and a preferably preserved significant building. And then at the January meeting, we were voted to the status of approved buildings of historical significance. So at this point, we moved that to continue with the application. We knew that we had answered everything that the Historical Commission needed from us. If I could go to the next slide, please. And so the next few slides are going to be slides that we used at all of these meetings. These were steps that we took to design our building in such a way that was going to preserve and restore the look and feel and design of our buildings from all the different stages. If you could go to the next slide, please. Changing the windows at the sanctuary, changing the windows at the new community hall. We altered our initial design for our front entrance to have it reflect upon how the door and the entrance was when we had the initial design of our meeting in the early 1900s. If I could go to the next slide, please. And again, to remind everybody what the buildings looked like and what we're preserving right now, even though we are changing the direction of the entrance, but we are keeping the same doorway. We're using the shingles, shingle style that we had from the mid 1940s. And again, preserving everything to how the building had looked from a historical standpoint. If you go to the next slide, please. And just a reminder of the history of our building. We were built in 1901, and the picture to the top left is around 1915. And then in 1941 is when our exterior building was resided and re-shingled, and that we're preserving the look and feel of our building to the same style that we had in those days. Next slide, please. As a reminder of the budget that we presented to you and what was approved is these are the 4 elements that we were approved to get: exterior shingles, historical windows, fire protection, and the front entrance to our sanctuary. And this was just the historical building itself, not the other parts of the project that we have, which is new administrative offices and the new community hall. Next slide, please. I just want to review the timeline with you on what we did receive for the approval. So in February, we got the approval from the CPC that we actually had the funding and the approvals. Then we went in front of the town council in May and received approval. And then from May to August, Pastor Angie and another committee member worked to put a preservation restriction package together and supplied information to Attorney Barbara Harris to present to Mr. Steinitz from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. We are still gathering that information on what was presented to Mr. Steinitz. We believe we have most, if we're getting close to getting all of it, because our intent right now is to meet with Mr. Steinich and actually review the information, review what was presented, review what might not have been presented, to see if there could be any changes to his decision. If you could go to the next slide, please. And if you, hopefully, again, you did all get the letter from Mr. Steinich to Attorney Harris, and these are 3 paragraphs from the letter. So the first one will definitely indicate his decision, and that he had reviewed it with fellow staff members, that they were going to deny our perpetual preservation restriction. And then in the last section, this is the part that I'm actually personally confused about, is that we did not fall under the characteristics of a structure or site historically significant for the architecture, archaeology, or associations. When we had gone through in front of the Historical Commission, and we thought we had this designation. If you go to the next slide, please. We do want to make note that that there's costs, both tangible and intangible costs, that from going through this process of what we went through. You're all volunteers. You spend countless hours trying to help people in the community, but know that it was our staff and volunteers plus expenses paid for a grant writer from early 2021 to the present. So a lot of time and effort, and I know you can all appreciate what we went through. We did actually have to delay some of the constructions because we were waiting for the different parts of our grant application to be reviewed and what we had to put in front of the Historical Commission. So we actually held some of the construction because we knew this was going to be a reimbursement process. We respected the input and the guidance from both the Historical Commission and the CPC that what we should do to our architectural plans and changes that we made to some of the building materials. We responded and reacted to that. And at this point, we can't go back. There's no savings by going back to our original plan. We're pretty much in the thick of our building right now. Today was actually a pretty significant day when our windows are being put into the building. So we have to stick with the plan that that the Historical Commission asked us to do and what we went through with the CPC. Next slide, please. Right now, our fundraising with trying to raise funds through the community and our congregation, we're as far as we can go. And I think if you remember from our discussions with you, most of this project is being supported by generous donations from the community and our congregation members. It's a $4.2 million project. We are getting so close, but we needed the money from the CPC to do that. And now that we potentially don't have the money, it's going to be very hard for us to get any more money from the public, from private donors to help us close the gap. This might require us to get additional debt, and which is something we really didn't want to have to do. There is some borrowing that we are making decisions on right now, but with the loss of the CPC funds, we're going to have to look at potentially borrowing some further money. Next slide, please. So our next steps right now is we're again reviewing the information that Attorney Harris actually delivered to Mr. Steinich. We're still collecting some of that information. We're in the process of requesting a meeting with Mr. Steinich. He did welcome and did invite us to meet with him. So we are looking forward to that meeting. And we're hoping that the CPC would help us with a letter of support, because during this journey, you were very helpful. You wanted to give us the money. So we're hoping that you would consider giving us a letter of support as we go to Mr. Steinitz. And next slide, please. As far as going back to this flow chart that we used, I think for future applicants, if this step in the process should be done earlier so it's not waited, so it's not towards the end of the process like what we've done, and after the approval was done, should be something that the committee should introduce to future applicants. So at this time, I'd like to entertain any questions you may have, or Pastor Angie wants to make any comments.
Pastor
I just do want to make one clarifying comment, and that is that when we made the decision about the shingles, we're returning to the 1901 shingle, which is a smaller exposure than the 1941. We have been making so many decisions, and I've had to present this so many times, but Jennifer did an amazing job. I just wanted to make that point of clarification that we went back to the original look, which is also keeping in line with the buildings around us in the historic district.
Thank you.
And I also, just can't express sort of our shock at receiving this letter. We knew that it would take some time to do the historic restrictions, but we had no idea at this point that we could be denied. And we did not get a hearing. I think that this decision was made based, as far as I know, it took me a long time to reach Mr. Steinitz, who's only in the office on Wednesdays and Fridays. But I think he made it looking at our website, which is not, I don't understand why we weren't allowed an opportunity to be in conversation or to present our case. And we're just still very much in shock by what happened.
Okay, thank you. Members, Deb, I see your hand is up.
I was in shock too, frankly, considering the shingles and the glass that you had. It was the original glass. The historic resources, and correct me if I'm reading this wrong, it says either have a state register of historic places or determined by local historic preservation commission to be significant in the history, archaeology, and architecture or culture of the city or town. Now, is that what the Barnstable Historic Commission did by supporting the application?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's either or. We don't have to just have his permission. It's or our own historical society, which we've had support right up the line. And I frankly think we should continue our support. I think it's a travesty that he just derailed the process. I mean, we allowed it to happen.
Hey, Deb, if I could comment on that. I don't know if we personally know, looking at the flow chart, we knew we weren't a state registered. That's why we had to go the route with the historical commission.
Yeah.
And we went through the declarations of, that's my wording of this, the declarations of what we were and what historical significance we were. So that paragraph that I bolded on the letter for you, I'm a little confused because we thought we got from the historical commission what we needed.
And that's what I would think too. And that's what I think as a CPC member, frankly.
Okay.
I think you have the go-ahead. It's just not on the state register. But there can be a restriction on it that we can ask, I don't know who we asked to hold it, but
Any other question from members?
Marilyn.
Marilyn.
May I comment that the Historical Commission, I participated in these votes and voted in support of the church, had 2 votes on it. One was for the significance as required by the Community Preservation Act, but that does not, that is just conforming to the Community Preservation Act. That's not conferring any other kind of historic significance on the building. The other one was approval of the plans under our demolition delay ordinance. And we had, I think they said multiple hearings on that, reviewing the plans, and those were approved too. But I think the key is in the third paragraph of that letter, that they all must meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. And the State Historical Commission is obviously the state decider on behalf of the Commonwealth, the professionals, and they do not think the plans conform to the Secretary of Interior standards. So I think that's the key issue here.
And thank you, Marilyn. And I think that's why it's important that Angie, myself, meet with Mr. Steinitz, because I hope you agree that the presentations that we had in illustrating what our buildings look like in the different stages of 1901, the mid 1940s, and that what we're designing it to be right now is going to conform to what we looked like over all these years. So I think that's, it seems like he's missing something in how the building is going to look.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from members? Did I see anyone? No one else? The one thing I did want to say that the applicant, in this case, Cotuit Federated, submits their own information for that. We don't get an opportunity to weigh in on it in any way, or we would certainly, in an appeal situation, if you guys put together an appeal, we can look it over and say, yep, we would sign on to that and go, you know.
Well, they did offer that we could submit additional information.
Okay.
We are still trying to track down exactly what they received. We don't even think that they received yet our draft of the restriction deeds. So, like I said, they're very limited. There's very limited time that they're available to be in conversation. So we're trying to track down what they received, but they did say that they would receive additional information. And we were hoping that we might submit with that additional information a letter from this CPC because we did follow the directions that we were given when Lindsay and Tom came to visit. We thought that we had presented what our plans were and that we would qualify. So, and that was or at least to be able to submit, that was like in the summer of 2021. And then when we presented here, it was said at the beginning of the meeting that we did qualify. So we're just confused about, that we followed the process that was given to us. And we would love to have a letter of support.
Deb?
So it's just a question about the historical commission. I mean, is it not in the village of Cotuit a historical building, that church, the church? I mean, why? We led them down the primrose path and they followed it. And I'm upset that we got this far, again, with the state. And it's the town money. And the town in all levels has approved it. Why can't we just go on knowing that they said something about having historic restriction in their deeds. I mean, it's protecting the money, and it's not, considering how much we've given a lot of other people, it's not that much money. I don't know. I think it's.
Deb, I appreciate those comments, and just listening to your applicant that was right before us. I congratulate them and I'm pleased for them, but I'm like, how are we any different than them?
You're a first-time applicant. They have been in they had previously approved restrictions.
Yeah.
So this is their third request. So
A lot.
They know the process. And this Mass Historic, I mean, it says right on our webpage, it can take 2 years to get an answer from them for
Well,
something.
I think
So-
that's ridiculous. I
Well, it
think,
may be ridiculous, but we have been after some conservation restrictions with other state departments for over a decade. So that's
But
why
we
we
still-
warn people in the application process that this can take time.
but we
and,
still.
uh,
We were
approve the
told
money.
that it could take time, but not that it could be denied at this
Yeah.
point.
Well, that's another, you can't do anything without the restriction. Unfortunately, it's locked in for historic preservation. So
So
like I
we
said, we
couldn't,
support the repeal. You know, put something together, this, whatever you're requesting, and we will sign on to it and, you know, go from there. I mean, I think if they didn't see proper information, then you should have every right to submit whatever plans you need to justify your perpetual restriction with the state. I don't understand why they haven't seen that, or we don't submit anything to the state. It's all up to you.
No, it's up to Barbara. It was the attorney that submitted it.
No, it's not. No, you submit the application, then that goes in. She only writes the restriction part. That's all her role is, to create the restriction. That draft goes in, then you submit supporting, as I understand it, supporting evidence. So certainly go forward and do that.
The email that you forwarded to us is the only information that went to the state. They didn't receive that's my understanding. I
Okay,
asked if they
well.
received the application and I don't think they did.
Send them the whole building plans, whatever you need to do to justify, you know, why you should be granted the restriction. That's the normal process. So, you know, that's why these people up there, there's 188 communities with community preservation funding, sending these people dozens of these things a month. I mean, you got to pitch your case. And we, as a committee, once you're approved, that's up to you guys to secure the restriction by working with the state and having it written up in a manner that represents your project. That's the way the procedure works. I mean, what we probably need to do now is do the restriction first, which means that people are going to have to allow 2 years to even before they begin their project, which if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do.
so I have, again, go ahead, Jessica, I don't want to.
I just wanted to comment that, and thank you so much to the church for coming in and kind of pleading your case. And I feel really bad for the church. But I also don't want this to happen to any other applicants. So what I'm hearing is that Barbara Harris sends up the conservation restriction, or excuse me, the historical restriction that she drafts in concert with the applicant, which is the church. And that's
Correct.
done. So the question the church has now is along with that restriction, did the entire file with photographs, with plans, with everything in the narrative also go up to the state? And that's unclear. I think that's unclear on the church's part. So I've asked Administrator Ellen, hi Ellen, if she could provide that information. She said no. So what my recommendation is, the entire CPC package that went to you, to the committee, as well as to town council, be included and sent up to the state as soon as possible, and then follow that up with any other letters of support from this committee and others. So it's unfortunate, but the process really worked against the church, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, if that's how you want to do it, Angela, we could send that up to them, or however you want to, whatever you want to do would be fine.
Jessica, thanks for those comments, because I think what we need, meaning Angie and myself, is whatever materials that was sent to Mr. Steinich, or materials that we believe that need to get to Mr. Steinich, is delivered to him as soon as possible. And we feel like, in particular, the narrative that Angie and another congregation member worked on, we don't believe that made it to Mr. Steinich.
If you didn't submit it, it didn't make it.
Well,
So That's what I'm
We
saying. Why
did
don't we put
submit
together?
it to the attorney. It didn't get submitted on our behalf, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, then that's fine. Then that's why I say I'd rather have this sort of a cohesive approach
Right.
rather than us sending something and somebody else sending something. Let's put it together and say, this is what respectfully we ask you to consider. Here is the entire documentation for the case. Could you reconsider? That's simply do it that way. So Alan, go ahead, Catherine.
I would also recommend that you include minutes from the meetings where we took the vote so that they can see what our deliberation was to a certain extent. I know that they're sort of like paraphrased in a way, but I feel that very badly about what's happened here. And I think that maybe the steps in this process need to be spelled out a little bit more.
Agreed. Anyone else?
I just want to make one
Yes.
comment. I'm sorry to hear about this applications about the denial from the state. But I think by the time you submit additional information, you should make that communications point blank from one party to another party, that you know all the information are there. So you don't rely on Barbara Harris assuming that she would do that, but assuming is not a good thing to do.
Right. Especially with her.
Angela?
It was never communicated to us that we were the ones to submit it to there, or that we needed to do a presentation. It was just that the lawyers were going to finalize the restrictions document. I didn't even know who this person was until I got the letter that we were denied. We were never given any contact information or a process for that.
All right, well, we'll work to correct that and get this back on track. Did I see another hand anywhere? Ellen, you got some information to put together, but I think we have it all at hand, so it shouldn't be a big deal. We may want, so as I'm including minutes, maybe the minutes of the historic committee meetings as well.
Yep.
Because they did their deliberations and that could be valuable.
Ellen,
Marilyn, you can get that for us, right?
Yes, they should be available. Most of our deliberations are on the plans rather, I don't think we spent that much time finding them significant. So
Well,
the plans, of
anything that
course, were more detailed.
We relied on your information to make our decision, so it's sort of a chain and you want to include as much of that information as possible. I think could be good. Anything else?
Just a question to Marilyn. So the Historic Commission declared it significant?
Yes, as provided in the Community Preservation Act. I think they cited that line where it's supposed to be significant in the history or architecture or culture of the community.
Right.
Ellen,
Culture.
Ellen, you have your hand up. Do you have an answer for that?
Not for that, I'm sorry. I was gonna say that I think this might have been a pre-application, the determination to figure out, ahead of time. They usually have this a cursory review, and I think that's what that letter is issued on that. I don't think it was a full application.
Okay, thank you.
I think it was a predetermination. And I think that's the letter came from that, and that's why you may feel this more information that should be, because there wasn't a full application. That information didn't come forward because it was a predetermination.
Okay.
I personally don't know what that means. Was Mr. Steinich's, when you say an application, Ellen, was there something specific we did or did not do?
So I think before you get into, really putting it together and submitting, including the draft restriction and all of that, I think that there is a first blush, and I think that is what that letter issued. I don't think it came from a full application, because it doesn't sound like you were involved in a full application. I think it was just a predetermination.
I see. Catherine, go ahead.
What would it take for the church to get a letter from Barnstable Historic Commission stating that it is culturally significant or historically significant? I mean, that seems to be the piece here, right?
No,
That
we have that letter.
Right.
Oh,
There's
well,
a letter.
then,
well, so the gist I took away from Marilyn's comment was that it was just pertaining to for the CPC application, but it wasn't that it was like recognized as historically significant to the town, or did I misunderstand?
I think it basically says that to satisfy the Community Preservation Act, but that's just to qualify it for community preservation funding.
yeah. So that should be what it's significant then, right? Yeah, okay. And it's town money, our money.
Part of my issue with all of this is that we look back and we've generally always said amongst ourselves, you know, if a building is 75 years or older, it's eligible to be included. That's the standard. And in this decision, they reached back to 1908 and said, based on what was going on then, we don't find it meets the standards now. Well, if we're going to need to know that, we need to know that at the very beginning. And so does the historic committee.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the kind of thing we need to eliminate. That's what would shock me is good. Well, so we need to get, probably the first thing from an applicant would be the history of the building. Because we have another application pending for the Marston's Mills Church that was moved there. There's a recent article in the newspaper about moving the church there from Yarmouthport. So they don't like moving buildings around either, and historic folks. So, you know, I think this is something that, you know, it's taken us a while to get a decision like this, but if that's the case with so many historic buildings in Barnstable, we really need to know the history of the project and then have a timeline that accepts the fact that this can be a very long process. And I think that's where we fumbled.
We
Go ahead.
did share the different construction projects of our church, the different timelines, and number 4 of the Department of Interior's guidelines say that buildings change over time and that the changes made can also be historically significant. And so that's why, and that was part of our presentation to you, and that was a part of our presentation to the Historic Commission, part of our presentation to the town. So that is a part of the guidelines that buildings can change over time and that those changes can also be historically significant. And that's why we maintained the doors and we went back to the original shingles from 1901. Right. So we tried to honor those guidelines as we understood them.
Right. So we got some background information to gather, different sources. Angela, you willing to be the receiver of all of this and put some type of request together that we could look at and say, okay, this is what we're asking, and we'll have to send it out. I don't know if it's going to go very quickly. Members might have to rely on Tom and I perhaps to make the decision that it's an appropriate request based on the information we have. Could you reconsider? And go from there. I don't think you guys want to get this in sooner before the next meeting, right? CPC meeting where we'd vote on it. If your members would empower us to take a look at that letter and send it off, we could do that.
Do we need a motion for that? We've clearly already approved this project and support it, so, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we do a motion, or what do you think we need?
I think we need a motion.
Idea. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed.
I'll make the motion to give Lindsay Council the power to sign off on the letter going up to the state on behalf of the Katuitt Federated Church in an appeal based on CPC support of this project in former meetings.
I would add Tom Lee to that, if I may, just so he and I will look at it. And
Tom Lee as well.
Second.
Further
Could
discussion?
I be involved too, Marilyn? Could I be
let's
involved?
see, 1, 2, 3,
or can you
4.
circulate it?
4 is not a quorum. Okay, but that's it. I don't want to get in trouble. We're
right
in trouble with that. So let's add those, a friendly amendment, Jim, if you would.
Yeah, and Marilyn and I'm sorry, who else was it? Deb?
Tom.
No, Tom.
Tom. So Lindsay, Tom, and Marilyn.
review the letter,
Review the letter,
attach it
attach it
to the
application with our support from our prior meetings.
And I'd be happy to deliver it with fury. How's that?
Second.
All right. It's moved and seconded to write a letter of support for the reconsideration request of the Katuitt Federated Church to the State Mass Historical Commission. Everyone clear on what we're voting for?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll have to call a roll. Terry hasn't joined us. I see Marilyn Fifield,
Yes.
Deb Converse,
Yes.
Catherine Garofoli,
Yes.
Tom Lee,
Yes.
Stephen Robichaud,
Yes.
James Tenalia,
Yes.
and Lindsay Council votes yes. All right, Ellen, if you could get Angie any of our background information that we can get and help Marilyn maybe get the minutes from their meetings, those kinds of things. You two stay in touch. I don't need to see everything. We'll keep that, we'll compile that, and then you guys put something together and we'll get that out.
Thank you very much. We appreciate
All right,
it.
you're very,
Thank you.
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Okay. That brings us to correspondence. I don't believe we received any. So next item is project updates. We did have some changes in some of the projects we had. The application from the Department of Public Works for Phase 1 restoration work to Zion Museum is on hold pending review of the lease. Certain terms in that were that they were going to take care of certain parts of the building, and so they're looking at that with property management. So that's on hold currently. The Katuitt Federated Church we already went over. The Unitarian Church is going to be submitting their application. We're going to probably start the process with them to get, make sure that as Tales of Cape Cod has done, all of their new work is approved ahead of time. So the preview application that Ellen was speaking. And we still are working on the revised application for trustees and that restriction. Legal has not approved the final of that. And we're anticipating the application from Public Works for the Osterville Recreation Playground. That will be coming in at a later date. And the last item on that is the Marston Mills Community Church. We probably should reach out to them, Ellen, yet again, and revise their timeline, given that they're going to need to submit their info on historic applications. That's the kind of thing too, which having the folks sit down, it took almost 6 months to get Tales of Cape Cod together to put together their application to Mass Historic and photographs. So we really do rely on the applicant to do this part of it, because we can't tell the history of the building. We don't know. So
yeah, I guess I was really confused on that with Katuitt as to why they thought that was left up to our attorney.
Yeah, that's still a matter. I'm not clear on that, but
yeah,
if you look at our handbook, it's really clear that this has to be done. But we're going to have to look at those pages in the handbook and put the Mass Historic stuff first, so that they know that this thing could take 2 years to do one of our projects. It's easily can take that long. One of the main things that we're finding, and Tom, you'll back us up on this, is just like Sturgis Library. They've just gotten their second quote for their expenditure of the overage monies that they had from their project of doing the windows and things. So just getting someone out to bid is very difficult. So we just want to be sure, and if I haven't said it in a meeting, someone speak up, that this is a grant process that's got a lot of steps, and we do the best we can, but every once in a while something pops up. Any other comments on the project list as we going forward? No. None. Public comment. Anyone out there from the public care to speak, or anyone else care to lend a comment to the group? Seeing none, any other general discussion, members? Did we miss anything this month? It's anything coming up? Nope.
Centerville rec playground design is hopefully being finalized soon.
Yeah, it's being finalized. It's going to be bidding process. That's going to be, these things are running well over $1 million now, $1.3 million, $1.4 million for these playgrounds. So,
Yep.
On to discussion. We've got to schedule a meeting of the election of the offices. Can we do that for November? Is everyone going to be available? So we
Yeah.
have to get that done. All right. So November without fail. We now have CPC handbook updates that'll include historic. If anyone has been looks through those in the time being, see something that may not be quite right, let us know. We might as well get it all done at once. We have to decide the format for the 21st of November. Anyone have an urge to go to live meeting, or shall we stay with Zoom?
I'd like live
I think.
meeting.
You want a live meeting?
Well, because then I had a problem downloading the packet today because of our printer and the reams of paper. And so at some point, I'd like an opportunity to be able to pick up the packet, if it's there on like Friday up before the meeting or something, because my computer is an old computer. It doesn't take a lot of documents, and our printer is an old printer, and it's a lot of money.
How about we send you a disc?
It's fine.
Like this application from Tales of Cape Cod, I would love to have thrown in a disc or something. You know what I mean? I know it's hard to transfer files out of town hall back and forth.
Yeah.
That's our problem. We could throw it on a CD and put it in an envelope. Because I may want one too. I don't know if we're going to print that whole thing.
No,
Yeah.
you want a drive. There's no CD. A lot of computers does not have CD drive.
Yeah, I was just looking to
Thumb
see
drive.
if my laptop doesn't either, so.
Thumb drives we could throw it on there?
Thumb
Go ahead,
drive,
Ellen.
But
The meeting materials are posted on the website, CPC website. You can just open that up. If you're having any trouble opening the liquid files that I am
Yeah.
sending, because the attachments are so large, I actually send that to the web request the same way with the liquid file, so that he can get it into a place where anybody can get at it. And it always opens. There's no,
yeah, no, they're good. It's just, I am the old school. I am probably the oldest one on the committee, and I prefer paper.
okay.
So it would help me to get the packets so I can look at them and write on them.
Okay.
know.
How are we
And
going to be
whenever-
able to do that from the time we post the agenda to the time that Deb gets her mail or stops
Oh,
by?
I can come in and pick them up. That there is that option
All right.
too.
Ellen,
know
I
it's
just,
crazy.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Ellen,
Go ahead, Kathy.
I had gone to the liquid file to download it. And it said that all the downloads, no one else was allowed to access any more downloads because it reached max download capacity. And so I did get it from the website, which was great, but I just thought you should know.
Okay, that, so I guess they're limited to 12, and I didn't realize that. I thought it was 12 per recipient when you look at that. So I would thought each one of you had 12 shots at downloading this.
I get the same thing because I was able to open it when you sent
Yeah.
it, and I
Yeah.
didn't save it. And then when I went to reopen it, I got the same
Yeah.
message, but I got it from the website. So
I can
That's what the
definitely,
problem. Okay.
I can definitely up the amount of views on that. It's not, I think that was just the, I can change that. It's 12 unless you change it. That's the base on there, unless I change that. And I didn't realize it was, I thought it was each person, not each email that got sent, because obviously there's more people than 12 that needed to get this.
Or
And I
would it be best,
apologize for that. But
it-
now
it-
I
would
know.
it be best, would it be best to have the link? Because it's got to go out on the Wednesday for the meeting. Make the link to the town documents when they're posted on the site, make that
Right.
more prominent.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Put a link to the Zoom meeting and then a link also to the webpage.
I guess that's how you'd have to do it, and that's where the documents are posted.
Yeah, that's where we're posting them. I
The link to the CPC material, I think you could probably copy the materials CPC link and post that.
Yeah, the CPC materials link.
to the web. Oh, but they would have to be posted already. When I
Ellen,
did that, they'd
Ellen,
have to
why-
be there.
Ellen, why don't you talk to Kim from the conservations, how she posted our materials?
Does she put them on the T drive?
She put it on the computer so that go on the web page, and I can always go there and grab my stuff.
Okay, I'll ask her.
Yeah.
Because you probably get more stuff than we do. I mean, I can't imagine what you get. Forget
True.
about it. So, yeah, let's do what they do, if he doesn't have a problem. All right.
Nice the material. I prefer to stay with the Zoom next time in November.
All right, Zoom, everyone, fine. We know Marilyn's all in on Zoom.
Yes, I am. And the Historical Commission is too, in perpetuity.
In perpetuity. Okay. Well, Sarah, there you have it then, Zoom for November. And with us then will be also Mark Milne is going to come in and talk about our financial situation at that meeting on the 21st.
Yes.
So that's all I had. Anything else, members? All right, well, I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none? Marilyn Fifield,
Yes.
Deb Converse,
Yes.
Catherine Garofoli,
Yes.
Tom Lee,
Yes.
Farley Lewis. Oh, I'm sorry, she's not here. Steve Robichaud,
Yes.
James Tenalia,
Yes.
and Lindsay Council votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll send you a
Thank you.
copy of that packet that goes out to the Mass Historic when we get it, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank